Okay, good afternoon, everybody, to the afternoon session of the annual conference of 2020 of BioRN. We're talking about a fireside chat, and believe it or not, we are really sitting around a fire. Well, if your imagination is good enough, it's only a virtual fire, but anyway, a big praise to Annalisa, who managed to get us around the fire. So welcome everybody back to the conference. I'm Siegfried Bialyan. I'm part of the BioRN advisory board, and besides that, I'm working for Ernst & Young, leading their life science center in Mannheim. We have a topic that was given to us, which is talking about the innovation potential in the BioRN region. Well, to be honest, I think nobody has any doubt that there is an existing innovation potential in this area in particular. You all know we have quite a density of high caliber research institutions, especially in the life science space, talking about EMBL, the Cancer Center, the university and its clinic, the ZMBH, the Max Planck Institute, and a few more. So Heidelberg does have a reputation as a city of science. However, I think it's also clear to everybody that innovation potential doesn't automatically mean innovation. So I took the freedom just to change the topic a little bit. And I think we better discuss about how to optimally translate the existing potential into real innovation and value creation, primarily, of course, also in the region. So in this context, we have four important stakeholders exactly around this topic. Unfortunately, as I said, only virtually, sitting around our fireplace this afternoon. Let me just briefly introduce the four to you. We start with Jürgen Bauer. He is from EMBL and as such a representative of one of the top research institutions, part of that ecosystem. He is the Deputy Managing Director of Emblem Technology Transfer, and he is also a board member of Heidelberg Startup Partners. We come to that later. Then we have, as one of the professional translators, Thomas Hanke, and we will talk about this translation, of course, in detail. Thomas is head of academic partnerships at Evotec in Hamburg. And in particular, he's driving the Evotec Bridge concept. Now also probably and hopefully being set up in Heidelberg. So also interesting to hear his perspective. As the second professional translator, we have Johannes Frühauf in the round, however, with a different approach, which I think is really complementary to what Evotec is doing. Johannes is the founder and CEO of Lab Central Biolabs in Boston. And we are very proud to have won his commitment to build the first European biolabs startup incubator here in Heidelberg. We'll hear more about that. And last, but by far not least, we have Julia Schaft on this panel. She's the one bringing the above colleagues really together in a hopefully productive and new translational ecosystem. As the managing director of BioRN, she puts and keeps all the above strings together and is driving a joint process towards translating the innovation potential towards real innovation, hopefully in this region. So she's kind of the spider woman in that whole network. And I hope this is not just offending you to be the spider woman today. All right, let's just go into the discussion. Since I was last with Julia's introduction, let's start the questions with her. So Julia, can you tell us a little bit why BioRN as the biotech cluster organization in this region has put this effort, translating science into business, into the center of its purpose?
Yes, thank you, Siggy, for the nice introduction. Spider Woman. I think my teenage son now would get slightly more excited about me. Okay, so why BioRN and why translation? So maybe let me take a couple of steps back. What BioRN was known for until now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was its pronounced ability to secure public funding for the region and funnel it into the research and innovation engines here. So we have managed to secure more than 100 million euros in public funding matched with industry money. So this is not including the EIT Health fund that BioRN played a really crucial role in securing as well. So that is fantastic. But there's so much more we can offer at BioRN in the combined pool of experiences and expertises in our boards, in the network. There's a lot more that we can contribute to this. And what BioRN has always said and stressed over the years, and has not only made friends with that sort of position, and Christian Tidona, if you're in the audience, I think you are, you know what I'm talking about, is that there is just not enough coming out of that innovation engine. So we have undisputed scientific excellence, but where are the startups, where are the IPOs, where are the products on the shelves in the pharmacies and in the doctor's treatment rooms? So that is something that BioRN was always very passionate about. So if you're asking me why are you doing this? So first you need passion, and I think we have proven over the past 25 years that we have passion for this topic. And also we are able to apply 2 of our core competencies here in this. So what you need to make innovation happen and put products on the shelves is industry. So excellence by basic science is really, really important. But then you need industry expertise to go through all the preclinical developments, the clinicals, the validations, regulatory hurdles, and so on. So that's what you need, industry corporations for our startups. So I think BioRN brings this to the table. So what we are really known for and what distinguishes us from other clusters is that we have a high presence of global pharmaceutical companies in our network. So 8 of them are not just paying membership fees, they are really actively engaged in our network and participating, and they have been crucial to the projects that we are discussing here right now. So BioRN at that interface between academia and industry, one of the core competences we apply. And the second, I think, is critical mass. So both projects that we're talking today about in particular, they need the critical mass. So an Evotech bridge would not work with one excellent university, and biolabs would not work in a region that has, you know, only a few scientific hotspots. But what you need is the critical mass of all of this put together. And what who could put this together better than BioRN as a neutral network partner, really bringing all these partners together.
So fantastic promotional introduction. Very good, Julia, thank you. But I still have a short second question. I guess this was not really easy for everybody to understand. So to tell us a little bit, how was this received by stakeholders here? And how did you manage to get them behind the joint project that we will be talking about in more detail in a minute?
Yeah, I think actually the secret to that is twofold. So let me just make 2 points here. So I think it was received really, really well. And key to that was first that BioRN is really neutral in this. So doesn't have it doesn't make any profit from it other than it can fulfill its mission to bring the region really to the forefront of a life science hub in the world. So there is not an end in itself. And I think people realize that and appreciate that. So there's no profit for BioRN itself. And then the second point is why it was successful, or we are seemingly successful in our efforts now, is that I think the region, Heidelberg and surrounding area, is really ready for that change. Yeah, the region is undergoing great change. at the moment. So it's really started a couple of years ago with, changing in the leadership of the academic institutions. Then there was some really complementary movements going on. For example, the Santiago initiative led by the Metropolregion Rhein-Neckar, also trying to bring more of that startup spirit into the region. Then High Screen, of course, the must not be named, had as devastating an effect as it had. On the other side, it really shook the region awake, and new structures are forming because of that. So that also had a positive effect on the mission we were trying to achieve. And then lastly, this is the recent development complements this very well. You might have heard that, there's this research alliance led by the health alliance between Heidelberg and Mannheim, where the two clinics, but then also the research and scientific efforts are joined together in a huge alliance that would, create something, a clinic bigger than the Charité in Berlin. So again, this is all working together into that critical mass aspect.
All right, thanks very much. Jürgen, let's come to you. Besides representing EMBL, you're actually in a dual role. You're also on the board of the Heidelberg Startup Partners. And this is something new, where all the tech transfer offices in Heidelberg kind of join together and work together. Can you tell us a little bit what was the rationale for the foundation, and what was actually the trigger point after, well, quite a few years of, let's say, less functional collaboration of these units?
Yes, of course. So just as a reminder for those who may not know the Heidelberg Startup Partners Association yet, HSP, as we call it, is a Heidelberg association supported by 8 members, which comprise basically all the main research and education institutes like the university, EKFZ, and EMBL, as well as the Technology Park Heidelberg, representing the city of Heidelberg, and the Chamber of Commerce of the Rhine-Neckar region. We have founded the association in 2014 with a goal actually to establish resources, implement structures and procedures, allowing us to actively engage to support the founders and the entrepreneurs of knowledge and technology-based startups from our member state, member institution, right? So the main focus of this association is nowadays really supporting the founders via education, coaching, establishing and maintaining expert networks, and helping them to acquire public or private funding. Yeah, what was the rationale? The original idea actually is already a bit older than 2014. Actually, the idea was already born in the early 2000s, where some of the institutes here in Heidelberg came together, and their resources and technology transfer at that time were pretty heterogeneous, let's call. So some had a full-fledged package, like probably we at EMBL, with an incubator, with a proof of concept fund, a venture fund, a tech transfer office staffed, and others had probably not these possibilities and were a bit understaffed. And we said, let's create a group of institutions and share experiences, help each other to understand what we could do to support our startups. And that was the original idea why we talked to each other. But of course, after a couple of years, we understood talking is nice, but we need to take action. So what can we do and how can we do it to help actively support our entrepreneurs and founders? And that was actually the trigger to found Heidelberg Startup Partners as an association. We said, okay, talking is not enough. Let's put this into action. And of course, if you want to take action, you want to organize events, you want to establish seminars and other activities, you need a legal body, you need a structure, you need resources. And that's then why we founded the association. And this was in the end the start of this organization, which in the meanwhile has been established as an important player in the startup ecosystem here in the region, really having organized more than 100 events for entrepreneurs, Kaminabende, Zunder für Gründer, hackathons. We actively support teams in the accelerator programs. There are two main accelerator programs funded by Baden-Württemberg, where HSP plays an active role in supporting the teams and these programs. More than 150 teams have been supported under these programs. So just to illustrate, this has grown in the meanwhile, and I think we can add value and contribute to the startup ecosystem here in the region.
Thanks, Jürgen. We will come to that in more detail in a while. Let's just continue first with the other participants here. And I just go over to Thomas and Johannes, whom both I introduced as the professional translators. I think what Jürgen just pointed out, I think it's okay, and it's very positive that we have the mindset that we need these translational efforts, and wherever we do coaching, mentoring, and all these activities, that's very good. But I think what we also sensed in the meantime is that there needs also some hands-on support, and this is where we talk about clear platforms, both from biolabs and also from Evotech. And so I would invite Thomas and Johannes, maybe Thomas, you first, to talk a little bit about your approaches. But first of all, maybe a general question. Both of you must have had a clear idea in mind, coming from and looking at Heidelberg from the outside. Nevertheless, you both chose Heidelberg as your first German site, and Johannes, even for you, it's the first European setup. So can you probably first tell us a little bit about your motivation? Thomas, will you want to?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think you pointed a number of keywords which I would probably start off with. First is indeed the translation element. I think translating, and I do feel as a true translator on two elements. One is a matter of content. What I'm trying to bring across, in particular to the academic community, is translate understanding from drug discoveries and drug development of what does it take to successfully develop product, to basically bring basic research into the commercial world, which today is absolutely needed to bring a product to the market. So translating this content, I think, is very important. So it's part of an ongoing, I would almost say, educational process. And the second part is sometimes it's also language, right? If you want to transport the contents, we also need to transport language. And I do oftentimes try just to translate the academic language into the biotech language, into the pharma language, into the investor language, because you need to bring together an ecosystem where all of them working together if we want to do successful drug discovery and development, because you need every mosaic stone has to ideally seamlessly work together to accelerate new medicines. I think the second element, which is important, is ambition. And over the last 4 years, I've been working very closely with the University of Oxford. We started our first academic bridge called Lab 282, which today has been very, very successful in funding translational projects, taking it to a value inflection point, and with the aim to generate spin-out companies. And when I started, Oxford formulated the ambition of becoming the MIT of Europe, in the sense that they were targeting to create at least 25 spin-out companies annually, which I found was an amazing goal. But it takes this type of vision and ambition that that will create a mindset that will support truly translation initiatives. And as of today, BAC2020 has contributed 37 translational projects, each funded with up to £500,000. And we have created the first spin-out. Now, one spin-out is, of course, not 24, so there's a lot more to go. But we could see if we start off with a common ambition and mindset, then I think this is something that can bear fruit in the midterm. And lastly, and coming to your question, Ziggy, why Heidelberg? Yes, indeed, we did do our homework, and we're thinking about where in Europe or in continental Europe, and when Germany in particular, do we want to take a deeper dive and create new partnerships to accelerate translational medicines. And it's been a number of things. It's been the proven output of excellent basic research, but most importantly, it's also forming a new ambition that Julia put quite nicely, that has really solidified over the last couple of years, where we see there's now a joint vision of becoming a center of drug discovery and also drug development, of course. And that was very clear and visible. And I've come around from a telephone call just yesterday with some of the key stakeholders of the region, and what you could sense is that there is a common purpose, and there's also a collaborative element around the table, where you basically see some people left, maybe some old competition animosities behind, and I could sense a common goal to accelerate the region. And this is fairly unique from what I've seen, and that has to go along, and that is probably my closing remark for my opening remarks. I think that has to be supported with an openness to create public-private partnerships, because this will be a key element at the end of the day of successfully translating drug discovery to drug development. I think we have to work hand in hand, and certainly thanks to BioRN and other people who have just started to create a mindset in the Heidelberg area. And for say Heidelberg, we can go also beyond the city boundaries, basically to drive this ambition. So overall, I think a really very, very fruitful and ambitious and forward-looking atmosphere to take things to the next level.
Before we really go into a little more detail about your specific approaches, Johannes, would you also talk a little bit about your motivation and your rationale for looking into Heidelberg?
Of course, happy to do that, Ziggy, and thank you for having me as part of your panel. I'm warmed by the fire. It's still pretty chilly here in the morning in Boston. Why Heidelberg? I mean, I've always had this ambition of building our network into Europe. For some of you who know Biolabs, we are a network starting in Cambridge, Boston, of co-working spaces where we help entrepreneurs, and we may have opportunity to go a little bit deeper into the model where we help them spin out companies from academia into the private world of commercial development. It's a fairly successful model, and it's growing rapidly in terms of market share and capital access in the United States. Of course, I'm from Germany. I studied medicine in Frankfurt. I did my Doktorarbeit in Heidelberg, and my wife and I, we worked in Heidelberg and in Mannheim for several years before going over to Boston. And so I had firsthand experience and have many friends in the academic realm there who are now professors or postdocs and still in the academic world. Many of them reach out to me regularly and tell me about their cool projects that they're working on at DKFZ, at the Universität, and at EMBL, and ask for, okay, I want to create a company. Can I bring it to Boston? And that's fantastic, but it's also really sad Why would they think that they have, if they have a good company, a good idea, why would they call me to bring it to Boston? Why don't they know that in Heidelberg there are awesome resources available for them to develop their company locally? And that's really what I think we're all about trying to achieve here with these various initiatives that are coming together. I believe that of all the towns and university locations in Germany, Heidelberg and the region is best positioned to be the first place to really tackle this and solve this problem. There are many aspects to it. It has to do with a cultural mindset of academia versus commercial, where there is still in many institutions, there's still this sense that doing something on the commercial side is somehow less pure than the basic research mission prescribes. I have lived that world myself. I've struggled in it, and I feel liberated to be out of it now. And I actually believe that as academic researchers, we all have a serious obligation to society to bring our inventions into meaningful products. Julia touched upon this in her opening remarks, and that's really what all of this medical research is about. It's not about writing more fantastic papers that are going to be read by a dozen experts around the world that understand the intricacies of your science. That's very gratifying, but ultimately, grandpa and grandma and the taxpayer on the street don't benefit from that. They do if you go further and you use these fantastic basic findings and you make something out of it that reaches their lives. And in our area, this is medical products, new therapies, new diagnostics, new medical devices. And that's really what we want to help with. I believe that Heidelberg is best positioned because we have the excellent basic science research institutions. We have the very central location in the heart of Germany, where I believe that we can also draw into our region if we have the right infrastructure built, innovators from other areas. Our ambition is to position Heidelberg and the region as a hub for entrepreneurial translation in the sciences. And I think we have the right partners around the table and the good opportunity to do it now.
Thanks, Johannes. I think we will come back to especially that, the networking and where can we attract all these talents and all these startups that we probably need to make it really successful. But before we go on, let's just go a little deeper. And maybe Thomas, you want to start, because I think your approach is actually positioned a little earlier than what Johannes is doing. So let's just go for our audience here a little deeper in the approach you're doing with Evotec Bridge. Can you just tell us briefly what the major activities are? You talked a little bit about your things in Oxford, but let's just go into the major steps that you are addressing.
So 5 years ago, I did do a more systematic analysis together with some Evotec colleagues, and we're thinking about what are the true bottlenecks to drug development to create the value proposition that Johannes was just very nicely outlining. So what are the real deficits of bringing new medicines to patients quicker? And of course, at that point in time, and I haven't heard it in a long time, but the notion of that there is a preclinical value of death due to lack of money to do experiments the right way, it's too costly, we need to find ways to bridge that value of death was a notion which was very prominent. And when we start to think about it, what is the real value of death? It's certainly not a lack of capital. There is so much money around, you can never argue it's because of the paucity of money to do the experiments. What it really was is, and I strongly believe it, and having done this now for 4 years, I still do believe it's really a lack of access to technology platforms and know-how to do the right preclinical experiment at the right point in time. And so as Evotec, we started to be, and we are much more so today, in a position to be one of the few global drug discovery companies, which have platforms to tackle any new medicine, any indication, and with any therapeutic format. So in other words, small molecules, therapeutic antibodies, cell therapies, gene therapies. Because as Evotec, we have the critical mass and we have the critical expertise, being a 3,400 people global drug discovery company with 14 different sites, to bring knowledge and technology platforms, be it robotics, be it technologies for target validation, be it MedChem to enable it to lead and lead optimization, to bring each of these segments, which all have to, in an integrated form, come together to accelerate drug discovery, to bring these technology platforms to academic projects. We are absolutely convinced that, as it always has been over the last 30, 40 years, that the nucleus for novel therapeutics will come out of the academic community, but you have to pick up the right projects and accelerate them with the right platforms and generate industry robust data to basically create the seed for attracting financing. And this is what we've done with Evotec. We call it academic bridges. We're working with academic centers of excellence in a collaborative mode where we at Evotec help to scout and find the right projects. We are helping to find funding partners who are willing to pay projects which are incubated in a collaborative way, both in the academic lab and at the Evotec lab, creating joint work plans to make sure we take the project to a data point where all of a sudden you can attract external money. You could attract venture capital money, you can attract private funders who say, oh, this is not only an interesting concept, but we have a robust data set to go out and fund this project. And I think the beauty of this model is where we contribute Evotec's technology platforms, that this is a model which is scalable and is geographically flexible. I already mentioned we started this in Oxford because we had a lot of, I say, supportive factors 4 years ago, but we've also done it in other places. We're doing it in Toronto very successfully with the University of Toronto and 15 associated research hospitals. And we're also setting this up in other places. And to me, it was, of course, very important to do it at the right spot in Germany. I think it's also important to note that, that from an industry perspective, the projects which can be considered suitable for providing the scientific substrate for these academic bridges are probably rarer than we would wish them to be. There is an excellent number of, I think there is a very good starting point, but in the academic world, people tend to think either a project is more advanced than it really is, or it has bigger therapeutic potential than it really has because the competitive landscape is neglected. And I think bringing the tools of knowing how to create a project plan that will support the true therapeutic value proposition, I think that is something that I think is not prominent in the academic world and doesn't have to be. And therefore is even more critical to bring the industry understanding and know-how in a language understandable to academic researchers to the table, have in-depth discussion, find the projects which have the potential, and then execute on them. And if I say execute on them, that means delivering on work plans that have a certain stringency attached to it, right? We come up with a real roadmap of taking a project from basic research to preclinical proof of concept, which typically is a point in time where investors' appetite starts to become visible. And that takes focus, it takes money, and it takes knowledge, and bringing all of this together. This is what we're doing at Evotec, and we believe that Heidelberg and the region are the right place to set up these initiatives. And so we are now actively planning to set this up early in the new year, and we can dive a little bit into detail, but these are still ambitious plans that we put into action next year.
Thanks, Thomas. I mean, you pointed out pretty clearly where you kind of sweet spot is. So it's really the bridging aspect from getting access, identifying, scouting, maybe also the ideas, that you think could be promising, and then really maturating these ideas. I think this is the very sweet spot, as you pointed out. And I think so it kind of leads automatically into what Johannes probably can tell us about his approach, which is a little, well, somewhat different, because you have a different starting point also. Johannes?
Yeah, thank you. And Thomas, thank you for the explanation of the Bridges project. We have been seeing and observing the activity of the Bridges groups here in the US as well. And I think it's a fantastic way of making more available to academic groups the professional platforms that we all need to ensure success. So Biolabs is I think fits in quite nicely there. We, at the very basis, we provide physical infrastructure for innovator groups that are fully equipped lab spaces with all the permitting, all the equipment and operational infrastructure in place that academic groups need as they move out from our local universities here, starting in Boston. We have, of course, a lot of companies coming out of MIT, a lot of companies coming out of Harvard or Boston University, where they are used to having support and instrumentation available. And typically what they face when they now raise their first round of seed funding and they have to leave the university is a big roadblock in terms of capital needs, in terms of operational hurdles that they're not used to dealing with. These are very smart people. We are talking about experts who have spent 10, 20, 30 years exploring certain scientific concepts. They are very smart, very hardworking people, but you're asking them to solve problems that are really not their expertise, which is to get a permit for a lab, to build out a functional biosafety level 2 lab and get the permit for it, to raise money, something that they're not really used to. And most of them don't have the access to the money that you need. It costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for them to get ready before they can do the first experiment. It costs them months of time that they will be working very hard to set up the operation of their new startup outside of university. We are trying to short circuit that by having optimized spaces available that are fully equipped and functional from day one. They basically have to go through safety training and the next day, typically they do their first experiment. We have a little tradition. If someone is able to actually do an experiment on day one, they get a bottle of champagne. That means they've been very determined in getting ready and getting some of their training ahead of time. So that's the physical infrastructure. We are currently home to about 350 startups in the US. And that changes over, as you can imagine, fairly rapidly, with 8 cities and 12 labs where people go. The interesting part and the more, I think, relevant part is that by creating these physical places, we are becoming the nucleus of an innovative community of entrepreneurs. And that really is fantastic to see. We have built a very deliberate effort to emphasize that aspect of our business. We use the physical infrastructure as the hook that people come for because they think they need a flow cytometer, they think they need a PCR machine. They need that, but what they need much more is an environment in which they can start to learn, as Thomas said, the new language, which means with the language comes the mindset and the framework, which means that we are helping them shift their mindset from the purely academic exploration and striving to product focused, to outcome and milestone focused, so that they now are much more able to deliver these scientific results in time. Because the reality is most of this work has to be funded by venture capital. Venture capital is the opposite of patient capital. That means you need to deliver in time and you better over deliver. And so bringing these groups into this world where they are now surrounded by peers, where they are now all the time exposed to the reality of venture capital and commercial life, really does help to change their minds. We have added to this model a close collaboration with industry partners, and I'm more than happy to have seen the strong interest of our industry partners also in helping set up this new biolabs in Heidelberg. I'm thrilled to have recently announced together with Julia that we were able to win Boehringer Ingelheim as one of our first sponsors, and recently also Merck, which is wonderful. They are partners, they are existing partners of our lab network here in the United States. And I think it's awesome to see that they're making the move to support us building this in Heidelberg as well. They will be integral partners for our academics that are becoming entrepreneurs. Why? Because we need to teach them about development. By having the pharmaceutical partners at their side, they can teach them early on what it is that they really should be focusing on. If you're thinking about a drug development program, what are the points that will make them want to partner? And having the availability of platforms like the ones that Evotech provides through the bridges is a wonderful easement in that process. I look forward to launching that. We hope that by mid next year we'll be ready to accept companies. So knock on wood that this will actually happen in time.
Thanks very much, Johannes. What I really like from both of you is really it kind of fits into a consistent ecosystem already. Different focuses, but along a line which logically and consequently walks all the way up to value creation in the end. And I think that this is really very helpful. You forgot to mention actually, Johannes, your approach, which I am always impressed about, is also very capital efficient. And from a perspective of investors, this is also a very important part, of course. And simply the fact, if the startup starts working on the experiments on day one, or let's say day two, this is part of capital efficiency. I think this is important to mention. What I would also mention, talking about this ecosystem in Heidelberg, Julia, you mentioned Christian Tidona, and there's a third column, if you like, also with a very translational effort from his biomedics initiative. I think this goes along the same line, identifying, he's doing it on a global, process to really select the best ideas on certain topics and certain questions from industry. So I think it's kind of really also complementing this whole effort about the translation. So this is definitely something we can be unique in Heidelberg. And of course, from a side of BioRun, we're trying to drive this and keep this ecosystem really as a combined functional effort. And I think this is how it works. But let's just move on with two more questions. You kind of mentioned it, both of you, but let's be a little more specific. What are the major success factors that you need to address? Johannes, you want to start? Because I think there are some preconditions. It's not just being in a surroundings like Heidelberg where you have a lot of universities. That's probably too easy. There need to be some success factors or business needs that you definitely have to ask for or have to look for in order to become successful.
Absolutely, Sigi, thank you. Of course, we are doing this now in many different cities. We started this in Boston, which arguably is ready for this, was ready for this when we started about 10 years ago. It had all of the elements, but we're also doing this in what I would call secondary cities, where there aren't all the necessary ingredients readily available. And we're using the BioLabs location to try and corral stakeholders and to motivate them. So some of the learnings that we have seen, some of the essential elements that we have seen can be listed, and we can just check them off and see what is available. We need excellent academic research. I think all of us are convinced that that is amply available in Heidelberg. And in fact, it's somewhat of an embarrassment that we are trying to solve in this group and others, that there are relatively few successful spin-outs created. So let's try and explore what stands in the way. You need, in addition to academic excellence, you need the talent that is translational talent. That means you need people who understand to take and who know how to take academic intellectual property and translate that into a package that can be investable. So here's, that's the talent of translation, and then that's the talent of development. Oftentimes, development talent can be recruited out of the large pharmaceutical companies where scientists learn to execute a development program through preclinical and clinical steps until regulatory. So that needs to be available. We need to, the interest that we see from our pharmaceutical partners is very encouraging in that. So at least the advice will be there. And I'm sure we'll be able to recruit one or the other experts into some of our startups out of the pharmaceutical companies, because it's actually pretty cool to work in a startup. You have much more control and agency than you have in a 10,000 employee global company. So watch out. We also need a very effective technology transfer process. So I'm thrilled to have learned about the Heidelberg Startup Partner Initiative of where the tech transfer offices work together. And Jürgen, I'm sure will tell us more about this, but that I have identified in many cases and seen and struggled and been frustrated with inefficient tech transfer offices. And it is terrible to see in some cases that everything else is in place, that you have a founding group who really wants to do it, that you have investors who really want to invest, and then you have a boneheaded tech transfer office standing in the way, not understanding the realities of what needs to be done. Ideally, we have a very transparent and very supportive technology transfer process that understands its role to make these innovations available to the public. It's not their role to maximize revenue for the university in the short term. Hopefully, this will eventually have a financial benefit for the university, but only in the long term and only if the product is successful, not through a high upfront fee that is unrealistic and stands in the way. I'm sure Jürgen has heard that many times from investors, but that is a constant frustration that we as investors face when we negotiate with uneducated technology transfer offices. So you've all heard me preach about this, but it's something that I'm quite passionate about, because I think it's such a small thing that we need to get right with signaling, with political will, and with convincing the academic powers to be that their role is also to facilitate successful spin-outs. Lastly, of course, and not least, is the availability of capital. We talk about that all the time. I think Germany has come a long way, but we're still behind if you look at the absolute numbers of funding, if you look at the sizes of rounds. And that, of course, is a continuum that trickles down from the final event. Many people don't understand that ultimately capital will flow very quickly. It's not, I don't need to have 10 venture capital groups sit in Heidelberg. I will have those they will come automatically as soon as they see successful companies created and exit, because greed is a good motivator for capital flows. So it's up to us to create good stories that will attract capital, but the politicians can help us there. We can create in Germany a tax environment and a funding environment that is more conducive for private investments, that facilitates angel investors, private investors investing in companies. You can incentivize that with tax vehicles, and institutional, knowledgeable venture capital. That is the next step that we can do better in Germany.
Johannes,
relatively small political intervention. Sorry.
Maybe we put this point a little bit back. I will come back to that because I think this is a specific point talking about the investors and the investments we need, and also the ramifications around that. Let's come back to that point. I of course know that Jürgen wants to say something about what you said, but let's first have Thomas Hanke talk a little bit about his success factors that he sees. I don't think they are very different. And then Jürgen, you will be able to comment on the supportive tech transfers.
Yeah, I think, Johannes, you took basically the middle part of my 3 success factors already out of my mouth in terms of having collaborative tech transfer offices. And I can, in a way, commend Jürgen in his role as being one of the, I'd say, of building bridges between academia, investors, founders, etc. So I think so I leave it there for on this aspect. But I think there's 2 other success factors. One is that there must be strategic alignment on the goals. What do you want to achieve with this translation between all players? Because if you don't have that set right from the start, people, they will understand that doing translational drug discovery, they will understand it differently. So you have to understand what do you really want to achieve? What is my main goal? Do I really want to use project maturation to spin out a company? And if I want to do that, I need to be aware that you have some of the other success factors that Johannes was talking about. Is that already in place? But am I serious in my ambition? I started with saying, like 4 years ago in Oxford, people say we want to be as good in spin-out creation as the MIT has been. And that is a real ambition, but you have to walk the talk. So you have to be serious about it. And if there is a project mature to a stage where it is ready to be rolled over into a spin-out company, you also have to be ready to act accordingly, both on behalf of the university, on behalf of the research institution, and by everybody else, right? So you have to be aligned on the goals, right? And one of the other goals could be we want to just out-license our IP. That typically takes a very different type of development program. And so you have to be aligned from the start. What is our strategic goal? How do we want to create these new medicines? And that has to be outspoken, and that should be pre-agreed among all players. And so one of the core elements that I've been propagating at Evotech is that we want to have pre-agreed rights to later stage value creation among bridge partners from day one, right? So that we know who owns what at which stage, what kind of stage you want to get at, and who owns what piece of the pie at the end when basically success calls for it. So that is, I would say, that is a key success factor to creating efficient translational research and development.
Thanks very much.
And that,
oh, okay, go ahead. I
didn't
didn't want to interrupt you.
One more point, and then
yeah.
And I think that also has to come along with some, maybe also some realistic mindset by the researchers, by the PIs. We haven't talked about that yet. I think it's up to them. What does it mean for me to become maybe a CSO? Do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? What do I really want to get out of this? Do I want to become a rock star entrepreneur? Or do I just prefer to just out-license my patent application and continue with my own research? And it can be a process. People can start thinking about what do I really want between these 2 extreme options. But I think having a cognizant process about what do the academic researchers themselves want to get out of it is going to be very important. And I think any motive is really valid. Some people say, I want to become wealthier by doing this. That's total valid argument. Some people say, I don't care about the money. All I want to make sure I get the drug into the patients as a first thing. That's an equally valid idea. But I think it helps sometimes for people to try to pre-think, what do I want to get out of this as the main inventor, as the source of intellectual know-how that is absolutely required to become a successful founder of a company. So an education process around this element as well. I think strategic alignment, education of the researchers, and operational alignment with the tech transfer office are 3 pillars I see to a successful startup culture.
All right, thanks, Thomas. So Jürgen, I mean, both Thomas and Johannes kind of pointed to the important role of the tech transfer offices. So that's your point. I guess you want to comment on this.
Yes, I'm glad. I'm thankful for these comments, because overall, of course, I share them with you. I think what we all need is professional tech transfer, which is sufficiently sourced to be at the same level as our partners in this innovation ecosystem, that we are aligned on what is possible, what is impossible. Johannes, you mentioned, of course, that some academic institutions may have unrealistic expectations from what they can get out early stage of a startup. And I guess there are two main messages to this. If we want professional tech transfer, we need to invest. And this is a message at institutional level. We need top management support. At EMBL, we had always been privileged that this has been recognized and supported early on. But I'm sitting on advisory boards of a couple of university tech transfers in Germany, in France. And I can tell you, this is really a heterogeneous landscape, where sometimes people sit with half an FTE, half a position, managing a portfolio of hundreds of inventions and even more patents. So of course, it's impossible to do this professionally. And second, of course, the message is to the politicians. If we want to have Germany being at the top end of innovation in life sciences and elsewhere, we need to have a tech transfer landscape which can support this innovation output. So that's very important. I think for us, this is a great opportunity. The partnerships with Evotech on the bridge and with biolabs here, because it provides us with major tools for our toolbox when we talk to our scientists and to our inventors, innovators. Because I think Thomas, you talked about ambition, and of course we have many people many scientists in our institute who have great ideas, inventions, and then they have even greater ambitions. And what we need to do is, of course, we need to help them to basically question their ambitions, rationalize their ambitions. But at the same time, we need to take their hands and offer them a partnership to move from their early stage ambition with their invention to something which goes along the value chain and which leads to a professional drug development, for instance. And there now we would have two partners here in the region who will support us along this way.
Jürgen, I like the idea that you just talked about, that both Evotech Bridge and biolabs could be parts of the tech transfer toolbox, right? So at least you recognize that these are very important aspects, both maturing ideas and on the one hand, and on the other hand, once we have startups spun out, to really help them in the first period, which is the most difficult one, I guess. So I think this has also been a process to recognize it, and I think it's one of the major successes that we have in the discussion in the Heidelberg ecosystem, that we got most of the tech transfer offices, and in particular Heidelberg startup partners, behind this whole ecosystem, including Evotech and biolabs. I like this very much, and we'll come back to the network. Well, I just have one look at Annalisa. Is there anything in in the audience, questions or something like that? I haven't seen anything in the chat, but you will alert me, I guess, if
Yeah,
there's
so
anything coming back.
can you hear me, Siggy? It's the fire speaking.
The fire
So,
is speaking. Oh, wow.
so we have a question that is actually fitting the role of the tech transfer offices, but I did not want to interrupt your beautiful discussion. So this is referring to IP protection and the impression that have scientists, academics, that they should never publish their result, never talk about that because it interferes with further steps. So how tech transfer offices are dealing with that and what the other also think about.
Let's probably start with Jürgen. You want to talk about the IP issue, and maybe Thomas and Johannes, you can add to it.
Yes, thank you, Sigi. Yeah, I think the key message there to the scientists out there is patent protection does not prevent or should also not even delay scientific publication. We just need to file a patent application before a scientific paper or a scientific presentation is brought to the public. But usually we can initiate the process of preparing a patent application so early, so fast, and establish it so fast that we wouldn't delay the reviewing process, for instance, of the paper. And the reviewing process from submission to a journal until publication usually takes a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and this is sufficient time for us typically to file a patent application in the meanwhile, if appropriate. So the important point is, as soon as a scientist feels that there could be an invention and something of value in his publication, he needs to talk to his tech transfer officers as soon as possible and to agree and align on the process of evaluating the potential for a patent application from a certain potential invention as being part of such publication.
So what's your experience, Thomas and Johannes? Because I think it's a critical point in both of your activities.
Yeah, let me take this first. I think we've all been there. We've all been academics. We've all been eager to get our stuff out and talk about it with our peers at the conference, because that's the world we care about, right? And so we want to submit an abstract. It's very quick, and I can go to this fantastic international meeting and be a hero. And I totally understand. And I've personally been there, only to then realize that this short moment of fame in front of your peer audience really stands in the way of patent protecting what might be a very valuable invention. And so I think the take-home message is not to be afraid of the patent process. The take-home message for academics is really to just educate yourself about the relatively easy path that exists, hopefully at your institution, at your university, at your research hospital and institution of higher learning, and talk with the tech transfer people early on. Typically it's sufficient to file what we call an invention disclosure form that sort of outlines in a short form the value and the findings that you've made, so that the patent folks on that side can start working on filing even a provisional or preparing the filing of a provisional patent. That typically puts in place what we call a priority date, where to which any future conflict or discussion or dispute would look back. And now you have secured for yourself, and now you have secured for your university, potentially, the value of your own invention. We won't name names, but there's we have seen up close and personal how this led to how the eagerness and the lack of knowledge about the process led to the loss of a lot of value in one one of our very closely associated groups where someone made a meaningful discovery. They found how like a diagnostic for a major disease, and unfortunately it couldn't be patented anymore after they had talked about it. It's a market that's very valuable and that is now available for everybody to use. It's fine, but the university as well as the inventor lost out. And so I keep that in my mind as a constant reminder. And I try to educate all of the academics that I work with, and also even the company researchers, because many of our companies continue to publish, and it's fine. And so that's what they should be doing. I think what's important is to not propagate this false sense that the tech transfer office is somehow opposed to your academic progress. They are not. They want you to be successful. They want you to go publish. They want you to go talk at the conference, but just take the steps of talking with them earlier before you submit that abstract and discussing how you could protect this. And I think more and more we are seeing them as partners than as obstacles in our academic careers.
Okay. Thomas, what's your point there? You even closer to the academics, I guess.
Yes, and no, I concur with both what Jürgen and Johannes said, but maybe another slightly different perspective is the one on timing. I would say that the risk is indeed that 95% of academic researchers tend to try to publish or poster present their innovation before talking to the tech transfer office. Please don't do that. It's for your own benefit. I think the other topic is also around timing. I think it's also a maybe an appeal to the tech transfer office. Think about when you want to patent something, because there can also be the risk of tech transfer office filing patents too early, and basically, and I know, and that's where professionalism kicks in, right? The good tech transfer office know when to file a project. In particular, if you start thinking about things like matter of composition patents, there is the risk of filing too early because you have some tool compound in hand. You go out, you want to basically write your application. It's of no use, right? Because it hasn't been particularly properly researched, etc. So it's an appeal also to the tech transfer office. Please make sure that you file the invention at the right time to maintain patent runtime, to make sure you have your claims can be enforceable, etc. And that would, at the end of the day, be helpful to the future entrepreneur. So sometimes it can also be a good thing to wait with a patent application, which in turn would require maybe not to publish something a little bit longer than you would wish not to publish it. So I understand for the tech transfer is always walking a little bit of a tightrope. You know, academics want to publish. I want to file the patent at the right time. And you know, and it's in case when you're in doubt, please maybe just go out and seek some advice of some of the major, as I say, I don't know, you know, so some of the major patent agencies or Kanzleien, whatever. There's a lot of people there who have a good feeling of when is the right time to file a patent. So please keep that in mind as well. I think that's an appeal to all stakeholders. And you know, pharma companies have a very conservative view on filing patent, not because it's expensive, but because they are basically very mindful of patent runtime. So please keep that in mind. Timing of patent application is crucial.
Thanks very much, Thomas. I can see from the middle of the fireplace. So that's Annalisa. There is another question from the audience.
Yeah, exactly. You already mentioned the mindset problem or advantage, and here there is a question: do you see a missing mindset of knowing your customer? What is the value for customer among scientists, also as a limitation for innovation in biotech?
Who wants to take this about mindset?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. So to be clear, first of all, we have to define who is our customer in the first place. Most of our startups will never sell a drug at the pharmacy or at the drugstore. Most of them, for them, their customer, their direct customer is not the patient or the prescribing physician in the hospital. Their customer is really their own buyer, which is for the most part their investor base, their VCs, but also the pharmaceutical companies that might eventually take up their invention. I have learned to understand the drug development process as some kind of a relay race, Staffellauf, of different disciplines. It starts with an academic discovery in the university. It then can continue with an entrepreneurial, innovative startup, oftentimes funded by venture capital, that takes that discovery of a first biologic principle and translates it into the embodiment of a first product, and maybe brings it into the first clinical trials, maybe even until what we call proof of concept in a disease indication in people. And then most of the time, that invention, now proven to be somewhat safe, somewhat effective, will be further developed by a larger pharmaceutical entity, because their capabilities match that stage of development best. So it's a question of matching to the stage of the innovation the right framework in which to develop it. Academia is perfect for first discovery in a very unstructured and really open and creative way. Startup biotechs, venture-funded entities are very good at the disciplined translation into product, and then pharma is really good at the execution of larger scale clinical trials, meeting timelines and the regulatory requirements, and ultimately the marketing. So back to the audience question of the customer, it's very important to know your customer. It's very important to build the story of your invention for the right audience. And I think that's part of what we're talking about, is that by taking the academic's customer is his or her peers, right? He's writing papers for reviewers to criticize or to wave through. He's writing papers for his or her peers. He's writing papers for the leadership of the university to find great and give him or her academic promotions, or he's writing papers for the grant-giving agencies. That's the audience, for the most part, in the academic world. Now we need to take that mindset and bring them into a place like biolabs, or one of these places where we create entrepreneurial companies, and help them shift their mindset and understand that now in this new stage of development, there's a different audience, and that audience has different requirements, different questions. And so that's really what we're trying to achieve. So I appreciate the question. It's very, very helpful, because knowing your audience, knowing the important points comes along with learning the new language to talk to this new audience.
Thank you. Let's just move on a little bit, because I'm afraid we're running out of time. It usually goes faster than you think. Julia, just coming back to you. I mean, we talked about fantastic concepts here, and I think about this ecosystem also, but all the good ideas and good concepts is not everything. Maybe you can tell us a little bit, because you were in the middle of that discussion, what kind of hurdles need to be overcome or needed to be overcome, talking about the city commitment, site selections, subsidies, funding, and so forth. Maybe you have some information for us in that direction.
Sure, gladly. So yeah, maybe starting with the bridges concept and also with Johannes and Biolabs, I think the first step was convincing both Evotech and Biolabs that Heidelberg was the right site. And you've heard from them very clearly that that decision, was supported by BioIN clearly, but I think it was in itself something that Heidelberg and the region did. So that hurdle was crossed pretty quickly. Then I think the second hurdle then was also a very easy one, city commitment. in particular for the biolabs project, we needed to have the city on board, the city of Heidelberg, because the site was going to be in Heidelberg. The city has jumped on this with a lot of enthusiasm. We're very, very happy about that. So the mayor of Heidelberg, Professor Würzner, has met with Johannes very early on, always shown that Heidelberg's priorities are to secure that site in Heidelberg, to see the value and what it can do with Heidelberg, really lift it out of that, scientific excellence hub into an entrepreneurial hub. Heidelberg wants that. So the city reserved a site for us in the Business Development Center and is always there to support us in any way. So then, when we're talking about the site, there are some hurdles, regulatory issues, nothing really too exciting, hopefully something that we can cross very quickly. It's a public building, it comes with EU funding, and EU funding always comes with strings attached as to the way you can use it. We think that hurdle has still to be crossed, but I think it's going to be an easy one, because that building has been built from the ministry and the EU to support startups, to help them be successful. And what other better model could there be than biolabs to bring as many successful startups through this building as possible. So we hope we can cross that soon enough. Yes, and then the sponsors, obviously, the project takes a lot of money. The budget has to be built, and we can't do that without our sponsors or with our partners that we have in this project. We already mentioned Boehringer Ingelheim and Merck in the biolabs project. So there are two. We still need more partners. So the project is open for more partners. I'm happy to take them on board. As we said, money and supporting it financially is only one side of the coin. We need that support also in building that ecosystem, that environment that the entrepreneurs will use to build their successful businesses. So all in all, I would say it's not all green, as the mayor said recently, it's yellow, but we're very confident that we can cross the remaining bridges and be there. With the bridge itself, it's looking very promising already. Thomas mentioned that we hope to open the bridge pretty much in early next year. So that's probably the first one that we can open, and then hopefully biolabs is following straight in its path.
Thanks, Julia. I have many more questions, of course. Actually, I wanted to go into the selection process, where to get the good ideas from, how to choose the best startups. Let's put this aside a little bit. Maybe we have still time. But since Johannes started out, of course, with the involvement of the investors, I would just like to go back to that point again. We do have some sponsors for the biolabs initiatives. I know, Thomas, also you are asking for an investor that goes into that bridge concept, wherever it is. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the investor interest, the investor expectations that you both see, and what is the major argument to convince them to join in. And well, first of all, I mean, it's two things. It's actually investing, of course, into the building and the concept and the process. That's, of course, more difficult, rather than investing afterwards into startups that might be promising. That's usually easier, because we do something for these investors in order to reduce their risk. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the funding and the investor situation.
Let me take this. So each time when we set up a biolabs, it's fairly expensive to set up. And we work with partners in each of our cities. In many cases, it's pharmaceutical partners. Sometimes it's directly sponsored by universities. So we currently have labs in partnership with Harvard, with Princeton, with NYU and Tufts, because they see the value of having this type of infrastructure, and the universities typically do have access to capital that allows them to set up a lab. Setting up a lab like this realistically costs between $5 and sometimes $10 million in the US. So we do need a partner, and in many cases, an institution or a city or a government can be great partners, because in a way, setting up a biolabs is setting up infrastructure. And I use this analogy: if you want to have the train stop in your city so that your citizens can take that train to go to work or to go to vacation, you need to build a train station, or else the train is going to pass you by. If you do not have a train station, your citizens will not benefit from the train line that goes by your village. Very similarly, we think of the biolabs infrastructure. If you want, as a local city, as a local government, as a local community, if you want to benefit from innovation, from the innovation economy, from the fruits of this intellectual power, you need to build infrastructure for these innovators. And it's not cheap to build that. So someone needs to go in and build that infrastructure with a civic interest, not so much with a profit-driven interest, because oftentimes you can't really make a lot of money with it immediately. The benefit of having such an infrastructure, just like the railway station that you build, is not that the city makes a lot of money with the railway station. They won't. But the railway station will bring a lot of economic activity. It will enable people to get to better jobs, or it will enable people to take the benefit of that transport. Similarly, with an innovation infrastructure like we are building with biolabs, where now innovators, local innovators or regional innovators can come here, develop their ideas, and in the process, they will create economic upside and economic prosperity. So by creating jobs, by commercializing patents, by ultimately creating a lot of economic activity that would otherwise have gone elsewhere or not ever have been developed. So that is our argument to explain the economic development benefit of investing in a structure like biolabs. So we are very grateful for the strong support of the city, that they have understood this, that investing by giving us access to the building, by helping us with the budget, investing in a structure like this will position Heidelberg to be much more competitive in the long run and reap significant economic development benefits in the long run. Similarly, our partners on the pharmaceutical side, they make capital available to us as well, not because they buy shares or because they hope to get immediate payback. For them, it is a strategic investment. By being partners with us, both on the financial side, but also on the operational side, they know that they will help develop ideas locally into products. Now they will get to know these groups much faster, much earlier, and they are actually well positioned to hopefully partner with them and maybe license from them or partner with them to do product development. So this is an argument that we always have to make, that investing in infrastructure like that will not be an immediate slam dunk financially, but it will be a long-term investment that pays off significant benefits in the long run.
And Thomas, you also request investors before you even start thinking about a bridge. So they also cannot yet invest into companies, but let us know where you come from.
I think what must be driven for the investors who are investing into an academic bridge, and this is not investing into brick and mortar, like in Johannes, which is later in the process. We want to get to the companies to the point in time where they can move over into the incubator. But what we need is strategic investors who are willing to also invest significant money, and I'll tell you in a second why, but which have a strategic interest in investing early into the academic projects. That means it comes along with a requirement to invest into a sufficiently sized portfolio of projects, because in the drug development process, attrition at this early stage is real. Most projects that we start as a translational project will never make it to a lead. They will never ever make it to a clinical candidate, because the attrition rate is based on the high biological risk associated with the projects is real. Therefore, what we like to do is we like to start with an initiative where we can collect 10, 15, 20, 25 million euros from a strategic investor who says, I'm going to support these projects. The projects are done on Evotex platforms or at the university in a joint work package, and we want to drive it to a point where we can then invest more money into it. And that requires a portfolio of projects, 30, 40, 50 projects, because at the end, we want to found 5 companies. Right? We want to make sure that in your lives, there's not 1 company, but 5 companies can move over there. And because attrition is so real, we need to start with a sufficiently sized portfolio. The investors can be different. We have examples in Oxford. It's an early stage oriented venture capital fund who says, we want to invest early, and it has a regional focus. In Toronto, we're working with public money. There's money coming from the government of Ontario that says, we basically bring this into the bridge called Lab 150. And we're also working with pharma companies who have a keen interest to access the academic community early, but who want to see their support being focused on drug discovery. And I can't disclose it, but we have also partnership with pharma who are basically following this concept as a strategic investor. Now they have to be aligned and have to be willing to, if there is a company, do follow on investments in the company. And there is a number of farmers now going that route where they invest into projects, but are also now then becoming serious, either through their corporate venture fund or through their P&L invest into companies afterwards. So I'd say the source of the money is diverse. It's a different type of investment, but in any case, there's also substantial capital requirement. But that should guarantee that there's a sufficient number of successful companies being created 3-4 years from today.
Well, thanks very much. I mean, I'm personally very convinced that both these activities, or the whole translational activities that we've talked about, have one common thing in the end. They're reducing risk, and reducing risk, I think, is a major point in order also to attract venture capital in the end, which is always a difficult, I hope, in that field, is really promoting this whole field by mainly reducing risk also for investors in the end. Well, unfortunately, I think we have to come to an end. We have another 3 minutes. Let's just very, very briefly open our scope, not talking about biolabs, bridges, Heidelberg. The good thing is biotechnology is coming into a much broader visibility in the society, in the governments. The politicians talk about, and everybody knows why. We're talking about Corona. What is just give me your final comment on this. What is your thinking? Will this be more sustainable, since we have a broader acceptance, a broader understanding what biotech could do in the future, including what it could do for society in the end, and for also the economy in the end? Give us just an outlook from your personal perspective. We start with Julia.
Okay, unmute. Yes, I think it is. It's a fantastic opportunity now that the spotlight is on biotech much more so than it used to be. So that's an advantage. Also COVID has had some drawbacks on us. It slowed things down in the beginning because all these activities fell right in the middle of the COVID crisis. But I think what's great to see and what the chances are now is that the public seems to understand that to solve the next pandemic, to save us from what we have just gone through and are still going through, we need to invest early into biotech. So both bridges and biolabs will hopefully be the birthplace of the next savior, the next BioNTech that will help us carry on.
And I think, Jürgen, you are also in a very important position, and you probably also have some comment on this.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yeah, I would just hope that this is really now an example which illustrates that Germany is an innovative country, and that it's worthwhile and to the benefit of the society, not only in Germany, but worldwide, as we see, to invest into innovation, into ideas, inventions from academia. If we look at the key players now in this pandemic here in Germany, like BioNTech, like CureVac, another important company in Baden-Württemberg, an important player, we see these are innovations coming from Germany, and we should really leverage on this and really try to keep the pace and the visibility high. And I hope we as a European research institution can contribute to that. And of course, Heidelberg Startup Partners for the region to make it also a lighthouse in the German innovation ecosystem.
So we still another few minutes. Annalisa, I hope that's okay. Thomas, your final comment.
This is in a way an outcry to politics. Don't be afraid of public-private partnerships. You will see this now. All of a sudden, it works. There is agreement. There is investment into biotech companies to secure future production of vaccines. Please be mindful that there is a risk of another pandemic, but it also can relate to other medical research with high unmet medical need. I think today we see, I think the opportunity of the COVID crisis is that all of a sudden we see public-private partnerships at work, which so far has never been done before. Hopefully this is not a one-off, but please be cautious about the future. Be mindful that there is a lot to synergize on, and therefore let's do this together and don't be afraid of these kinds of initiatives.
Johannes, you have the final word.
So kind of you. Thank you all for being on the panel. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think my final word is the same as all of yours. I think this is an opportunity, the terrible crisis, but it shines a spotlight. And I hope that the German public and the German politicians see this. Germany has wonderful, innovative basic science. And I'm so proud to see BioNTech and CureVac at the forefront of solving these worldwide problems. But they made it that far against all of the difficult obstacles that we are putting in their way. I really do want to shout out to the politicians to see biotech as a growth area, biotech innovation as a growth area in Germany, and to build a framework and also to support it with open-minded immigration of qualified people that we want to attract to Germany. So that we can build a hub. We will start building this in Rhein-Neckar region now around Heidelberg, but Germany can be a wonderful place for innovation, as we are seeing with the progress made in the COVID crisis. I hope it doesn't go away after COVID. There are many more things we need to solve: cancer, Alzheimer's, aging, all of this stuff. So we need the politicians to help us and see biotech as a major area for investment in Germany.
So thanks very much. Thanks to all of you. Unfortunately, we have to close this session. It has become so cozy around the fire. Thanks, Annalisa, for that and for advising us from the background. Well, there's certainly many more questions to be discussed. I think the intention was really to, just start this discussion. And I hope we can also continue, at least in this group and with more stakeholders we have in the team, to really make it a success. So I hope when we convene next year, same time, Julia, we will have to talk about, delivery. And I'm very hopeful. Thanks to all of you again. And with this, I pass over to Julia for the final remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sigi. Thank you to all the participants in the panel. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to be there with you talking about our work that we do here in Heidelberg. Now, the conference is coming to a close. I think at this point, we are switching back to our sketch ladies, Sonia and Katja. They will show us what session 2 looked like in their graphic recordings. And I think they might have a sneak peek of the third session, the fire chat as well. Sonia and Katja, are you there? And are you ready to show your work?
Wow. I like this.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. And I hope you can also see my screen.
We can, yes, looks beautiful.
I try to make it a little bit bigger. So this is our draft for the second session. I must say it was really not easy to digest, not being an expert like you are, but we try to capture here all the 3 talks from your second session. What you can see is the talk from Kai Johnson. And I learned definitely a new word today, which is snippets. And I tried to capture that model also here. And how the model can be applied, turning also then the antibodies into the snippets and also even being able to use a smartphone. And then the second talk was about the middleware, what you can see there, the monitoring and the e-health topic and the clinical trial with the mitochondrial diseases and the benchmarking, which is not final yet, but on its way. And the third one was Ulrich with the talk about the nano and comobodies and the cute alpacas, which also found their place on our picture, and the test on corona virus. The second one, the third picture, let's say, is your last talk. You see, this is very much in a draft mode, so still unorganized, but we will finalize that now over the weekend, and we are happy to share the results with you.
Okay, fantastic. I don't think we ever had a better recording of our annual conferences. So we'll definitely approach you guys again for the next annual conference next year. Wonderful. So as I said, we're almost at the end of the conference. I think now it's time to show you who has been working tirelessly in the background. We have the whole team of BioRN who's been active today joining us. I think the view is switching now to make them all visible. And it's also still the speakers, but there they are. There are Arantxa. We have Ann-Christine and Friedemann, and of course, Annalisa. And I have to single out Annalisa once again. Annalisa has been rocking this annual conference from start to finish, taking it through several instances of, it being an on-site presence at EMBO, then switching maybe to a hybrid, then culminating in this virtual form here today. And nothing shook her. She just stood firmly as a rock and guided us through this whole thing. So I have to say thank you very much to Annalisa. Even though this is not always Corona conform, but there's some flowers for you. So well done. Thank you very much. Okay, so now I think we're wrapping up. And for this, I'm handing over to another member of our board, Michael Boutros. He would like to wrap up all the sessions all in one, and also give you a bit of a lookout to the next annual conference waiting for you in next year. Michael, we can't see or hear you yet. Are you there?
I'm there, but I cannot start my video.
Oh, okay.
Because the host had stopped it.
Okay, the host is working on it.
Okay.
There he is.
Thanks very much.
Wow, you used the BioRN background. Fantastic.
So it's really my turn now to, first kind of thank Julia Schaft and her whole team on behalf of the executive board of BioRN to really make this happen. I think it has been an extremely productive year for BioRN. There have been also many challenges with COVID, that many of our formats that really rely on close interactions were not possible, but there are many new formats that came up. So this is kind of almost the closing of the year with kind of in terms of virtual format. So it's my turn to close our traditional BioRN annual conference on this year on precision technologies for life. We had I think more than 100 participants in joining in many different sessions that were there today. We had 70 one-to-one meetings, virtual one-to-one meetings that took place from yesterday and are still, I think, going on until 6 p.m. Today. And this also will be not the last BioN meeting, but the next BioN meeting is already planned. It will take place at EMBL. We anticipate that it will take place also in person at the ATC in the autumn of 2021. So date will be announced soon, and we will be also scouting for exciting topics and speakers that will present there. So with this, I would also like to thank all speakers that joined us for the day, for accepting the invitation to this format. I think everybody did a terrific job of really showcasing kind of different things that are happening here in the region and beyond. It also highlights basically the innovation potential of the region. And the last session, Fireside Chat, also basically demonstrated what maybe the next steps we can take to make it even better. I would also like to thank our sponsors that basically supported us: AbbVie, Boehringer Ingelheim, GSK, and Roche, Merck, Evotec, and Sanofi, and also the Technology Park in Heidelberg. So with this, I would like to close the meeting. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. Thanks for all the speakers. Thanks to the whole BioN team who made it happen. And I think we all hope to see you in person next year.